My name is Milton Friesen, and I'm the director of the Social Cities program at Cardus. Recently, we have started developing a case study project that is aimed at telling the stories of institutions and organizations in our communities who have found a way to take maybe what's common around them and combine those ideas in unusual ways to develop better results or to solve a problem that has, to this point in time, been difficult to solve. So the case study process will take an organization or an institution and begin to try to decode what's going on, to understand what's happening kind of under the skin of the organization. Often what happens is you'll see something really great that looks like it's working, and so someone else might say, hey, we'd like to do that too. But then when they imitate it, they end up imitating the result instead of understanding the process underneath it that gave rise to the result. So the case study project is trying to get at what's underneath it, what we call sort of the generative process, that there's some unique combination of things that's yielding a really great result. Cardus is interested in the social architecture side, and so that's why we are really interested in organizations and institutions that have found unique ways to organize people and processes that will give them a much better result. We took on the Indwell case study because it was such an interesting example of a community organization that had been around for some time. It was dealing with a difficult challenge, people with serious mental illness. It was trying to solve a challenge around transience and how keeping people in the same place, in a stable environment with the right level of care was really essential to trying to come to terms with that. And they did it in a way that was very distinctive, very unique, and particularly effective. What is it about Indwell that's innovative? And in fact, even before that, is it innovative? Are they doing anything that's worth looking at? And we found three interesting elements within the Indwell process that proved to be quite central to its work. And those three things were their business model that they used to help structure their organization. Then they had a client care model, so they're actually needing to deliver something to people, so that's really critical, of course. And then they had a third component called a natural community, which was sort of an informal network of people that sort of underpinned what they were doing. Now, if you looked at each of those components, you would not find anything particularly unique about them. Their business model is not going to be reviewed by the Harvard Business Review in and of itself. Their client care model has some good things in it, great things, but it's not so unusual. The natural communities that exist around us, those are friends, family, they could be groups where we have common values with other people. That's also something that is around us every day, so that's not exactly entirely different. But Indwell did something unique, which was they brought the business, the client care, and the natural community models together in such a way that they created a new kind of synthesis. And that new kind of synthesis enables them to actually deliver better care at lower cost, much lower dependence on government funding or public money, much higher level of trust within that natural community that allows them to access financial resources, volunteers, all kinds of informal supports for people suffering with serious mental illness. And then they've taken that and translated it into actual physical facilities where people can live and stay and where their needs can be met. We are interested in telling the story, saying, could this model, could this approach be used by other people to solve other social challenges? Maybe not people with serious mental illness, maybe people dealing with extreme poverty, maybe it's people looking to support those whose access to education isn't there. And so the intent is not that someone would mimic Indwell, but that they would understand the generative components and say, hey, what I'm working at, I can see that we have a strong natural community. If we have a good business model, if we bring into that a good care model or a need model or an education model, it may be that we can actually take advantage of the kinds of insights that Indwell has generated through their own long learning and transfer that into a new situation.
I'm Steve Rolfe. I'm the Director of Policy and Planning for Indwell.
And I'm Jeff Nevin, and I'm the Executive Director at Indwell.
We provide a focus on housing. and supports to stay in housing. And some of that stems from this idea that we often imply that all people need are all kinds of services, right? So if you have a mental health issue, we're going to give you mental health services, and that's going to help out. But quite often when you're delivering those services, you notice really what this person needs right now is a good place to live, and neighbors and people that are just going to help that person stay in the housing where they're at. And it seems to me that we take that approach to heart, and we focus on providing the physical environment, the space for home, but also the community that creates home. And it allows people a place to become themselves, to be part of community, and to be asked to do things that typically you wouldn't get asked to do.
One of the greatest things that we have going for us is that our model, our funding model, has pushed us to have to be innovative. Not having any Ministry of Health or Ministry of Community Social Services funding, and saying, okay, how do you do housing with supports for people who, many of whom have experienced homelessness, many of whom have a lot of challenges. A lot of different, whether it be addictions or mental health or developmentally challenged, various disabilities, and I think that push has really helped us to have to be innovative. If you're going to break that cycle of poverty, it's about when people who are who have privilege, who have networks, who have a lot of different connections, when those people relocate, move in, and join community with those who are marginalized, who are those on the fringes, when people with networks extend those to people without networks, something beautiful happens. When we ask people, what are you good at? And what can you contribute to this community that you live in? Something beautiful happens, and we've seen it over and over again, where people's mental health improves, where addictions decrease, and those are exciting things. And it comes out of that relational approach. But as a housing provider, to take a relational approach and build communities rather than just housing. Communities of inclusion. I think that's one of the uniqueness for us.
There aren't many of us at Indwell who don't actually have direct relationships with the people that we're working with, and that has become so vital to staying innovative and staying fresh, because you're listening to people, you're hearing what's happening, you're hearing how things evolve, and you're working that into what you're doing.
The garden is another one for me, where the tenants so we want to have a community garden, and I just think it's amazing that somebody who lives here happens to have a landscape design diploma from way back when, and you can tap into that and say, okay, well, help this community design that, and it happens, and there it is, and people are eating the vegetables from the garden in the collective kitchen. And I think there's something like 3 people that live in this building who've turns out way back when, at some point in life, have been chefs. And maybe there's been a hospital experience or a homeless experience in between there, but to see those abilities come back, and you can just see life and hope coming back to people when you give them an opportunity to use their abilities. The very fact that someone has a stable place to live, a relationship with their neighbors and with the broader community, and has the ability to contribute and be a part of something, those make real change. And with that real change, it has some other spin-offs. Our cost per person of our organization, right now, if you take our whole organizational budget, and then you divide that by the individuals that we serve, it works out to about $13,000 per person per year. And with that, we provide housing. In about half the cases, we provide all utilities, and in all cases, we provide some of the utilities. And we have programming and support. So the other spin-off of that is you can do more. And why wouldn't we want to serve more people? We have to be innovative. We can't serve just a few people really well. We need to serve a lot of people well.
We don't have a particular formula or a dogmatic way of actually approaching. This is how you build a housing project.
Right.
It starts with the question, how can we contribute, or how can we create a solution to a very specific problem?
And what do we have?
And what do we have?
That's there already.
And it's a very...
Who can we tap into?
Yeah, and it's a fluid way of actually looking at it. So I guess in terms of advice, I would be looking at, stay fresh, stay fluid. Keep on top of the innovation. I think that's been a real strength that we've had, the ability to step back, think fluidly, and really stay focused on a specific solution to challenges or interesting problems. The other thing that I pick up from those comments is, and I know that the case study talks about John McKnight. We both like John McKnight and read John McKnight. And that is that when you look at communities that you're moving into, or you're looking at planning a social service, looking at the assets that people bring to the mix is not an afterthought. Not taking that into account is, could be called bad planning. We know that when we invite tenants in and they're moving in, yep, they've had a history of homelessness. Yes, maybe they've been in shelters. Yep. But we also know that some of them were chefs before they ran into difficulties. Some of them had landscaping contracts. Some of them worked at gas stations.
And property managers. All kinds of things.
And you're providing people with a specific service. We're providing home. What can people do with that asset? And it's relying on people and trusting that people know what to do with that asset. Staying in tune with the people that you're serving, having relationships with them, and fluidity of thinking. I think that kind of captures what I might be offering.
I still remember going to the neighborhood association proposing this, and people came. 31 people showed up at that meeting. And we put it out there. We said, here's what we're trying to do. And the response back, we waited for it, and then it came, and the first one was, how do I get my granddaughter into this program? And then someone else said, how do I support this? And then they called for a vote, and 31 people, unanimous support for an affordable housing project. And we've had the same kind of response across the street. And it speaks to the assets of the East Hamilton community, of having pretty big hearts, of caring, of being connected with people who are marginalized, being connected with people who are living on that fringe. And I think that's the role we continue to play, as well as that bridge of connecting people together.